Arc Raiders. 14 million copies sold. Best multiplayer at the Game Awards. One of the fastest-selling extraction shooters ever made. Now sitting at an 81% drop from its Steam peak. Marathon. Bungie's big comeback. The game that was supposed to prove the creators of Halo and Destiny still had it. Down 72% from its all-time high in just over a month. And Escape from Tarkov, a 10-year-old game that has survived scandals, drama, and more broken promises than most studios make in a lifetime, is currently holding more Steam players than both of them. Nobody saw that coming, and it tells you something very specific about what it actually takes to survive in the extraction shooter space. Hello, I'm Particle. Let's talk about what these numbers really mean, and why the old man of extraction isn't going anywhere.
Let's put the raw data on the table first, because the picture it paints is jarring. Arc Raiders launched in October 2025, with a Steam peak of 481,966 concurrent players, a monster number for any paid game in the extraction genre. Today, that same game is sitting at around 44,000 players, with a 24-hour peak of roughly 90,000. That's an 81.2% decline from its all-time high. Marathon, Bungie's extraction shooter that launched in March 2026, peaked at 88,337 concurrent players on Steam, significantly lower than Arc Raiders from day one. It has since dropped 72% from that peak, sitting at under 9,000 players at time of writing. Now look at Escape from Tarkov. The game launched on Steam in November 2025 as a secondary platform. Its main player base has always lived on Battlestate's own launcher, where numbers are deliberately hidden from public view. Tarkov's Steam peak was just 47,800 players, modest compared to either competitor. But right now, Tarkov is holding 15,262 players on Steam alone, with a 24-hour peak of 16,541, a minus 65.3% drop from its own peak, less steep than either Arc Raiders or Marathon. And in raw numbers, more active players on Steam right now than Marathon. A game a decade old, on a secondary platform, is currently outperforming two of the most hyped extraction shooters of the past year in daily active users. That is not a headline anyone had written in advance.
Let's be clear about something important before we go further. A drop in player count after launch is not automatically a death sentence. Almost every live service game in history has experienced a sharp post-launch decline. The question isn't how far the numbers fell, it's whether enough players stayed to keep the game alive and growing. For Arc Raiders, the decline has real causes that go beyond the natural post-launch curve. The game's biggest content update since launch, a brand new map called Riventides, dropping tomorrow at the time of writing. That's 5 months between the launch and the first new map. For an extraction shooter, where players consume maps relentlessly across hundreds of hours, that is a long time to ask your community to stay engaged with the same geography. The creator departure has made things worse. Nadeshot, The Burnt Peanut, Ninja, names that drove enormous visibility for the game at launch, have moved on. When the streamers leave, the casual audience that followed them tends to leave shortly after. And internally, the game is wrestling with a design debate that has been simmering since day one, the PvP versus PvE matchmaking question, and how the game's aggression-driven system sorts players into different experiences. That debate is still unresolved, and it's actively dividing the community at a moment when unity would serve the game far better. None of this means Arc Raiders is dying. Riventides is coming. Embark Studios has the resources and the track record to course correct. But right now, in April 2026, the game is in a vulnerable window, and the numbers reflect it honestly.
Marathon's situation is different, and arguably more concerning, because the problems started before the decline. They started at launch. The game peaked at 88,337 players on Steam. For context, Arc Raiders peaked at nearly 482,000. Marathon is the work of Bungie, the studio that created Halo and built Destiny into one of the most successful live service franchises of its generation. The gap between those two launch peaks represents an enormous disconnect between expectation and reality. The core complaint from players has been consistent. Marathon is complex in ways that punish newcomers without rewarding the investment enough to make the learning curve worth it. The game demands significant time to understand, and in a competitive market where players have Arc Raiders and Tarkov as alternatives, that barrier becomes a wall. Bungie asked reviewers to delay their assessments, a move that generated its own wave of skepticism, and the game launched to mixed sentiment that has not clearly improved since. Bungie is betting on the April 14th Recon Shell patch and ongoing seasonal content to turn the tide. But losing 72% of your player base in a month when you are a premium title competing for attention in a crowded genre is not a position anyone wants to defend from. The studio that survived Destiny 2's most turbulent years has proven it can fight back. Whether Marathon gives them the runway to do so is the real question.
Here's the part that makes this story genuinely fascinating. Escape from Tarkov should not be winning this fight on paper. The game is 10 years old. It has been through one of the most damaging developer controversies in recent gaming memory, when Battlestate Games announced a pay-to-win edition that set their own community on fire. The game's learning curve makes Marathon look like a tutorial. It is unforgiving, punishing, and deliberately hostile to casual players. And yet, right now, on Steam, it has more daily active users than Marathon. The reason comes down to one thing. Battlestate Games has never stopped feeding the game. While Arc Raiders waits 5 months between maps, Tarkov just launched the Casus Belli event, a new mission chain with a brand new enemy type called Pillagers, active across multiple maps. A new map called Icebreaker is on the horizon. The game's first major DLC, Scav Life, is being developed. Version 1.0 launched in November 2025, a milestone that represented a full overhaul of the game after years of early access. Tarkov's community is not large because the game is new or because it's easy. It's large because the people who stayed through all of it, through the controversies, the wipes, the broken promises, and the brilliant patches, have built a relationship with the game that no amount of Steam decline statistics can easily dissolve. That kind of loyalty is not manufactured. It is earned year after year through content that respects the investment players have made. That is the lesson sitting underneath these numbers. Retention is not about peak player counts. It is about what you give players to come back to, week after week, month after month, long after the launch hype has evaporated.
So, is Arc Raiders dying? No, not yet, and probably not at all if Riventides delivers what the community needs. Is Marathon in trouble? More than Bungie would publicly admit, but studios have come back from worse. And is Escape from Tarkov actually winning? By the only metric that matters right now, how many people are actually playing? Yes. Quietly, stubbornly, and completely against the narrative, it is. The extraction shooter genre is not dying. What's dying is the idea that you can launch into this space and coast on your launch numbers. The players who commit to these games are among the most demanding in gaming. They will stay if you give them a reason. They will leave the moment you stop. Tarkov never forgot that. Arc Raiders is learning it. Marathon is figuring out whether it has time to learn it at all. What do you think? Can Arc Raiders turn it around with Riventides, or has the window already closed? And does Tarkov's resilience actually surprise you? Drop your take in the comments. I read everything. Leave a like and subscribe if this kind of breakdown is what you're here for. And don't forget, I'm Particle.